Stored Republic via GCR, updated. Judy note, it was believed that the 12 days of exposure that led into the 10 days of darkness began on Wednesday 4th of October. With the so-called test of the emergency broadcast system that was said to actually be a switch over to the new Starlink satellite system. Iraq was expected to reveal their new dinar rate on Saturday 7th of October, while Tier 4B, us, the Internet Group, could likely start exchange/redemption appointments on Monday 9th of October. Since that Wednesday 4th of October, beginning of 12 days of exposure and 10 days of darkness, and according to Tucker Carlson, Ukrainian President Zelensky was arrested and sent to a Russian prison. While a top Ukrainian official provided a list of U.S. politician names who have allegedly been stealing over $1 billion taxpayer dollars by laundering it disguised as aid to Ukraine, the monies were sent back into their pockets in the largest money laundering operation of all time, see #D. Washington, D.C. was boarded up and empty. We are in the middle of the largest military operation in the history of the world. Evidence has surfaced that the FBI planned the January 6 operation and planted documents days earlier that were later used against innocent Americans. It was discovered that the government itself was the author of the mysterious 1776 returns document, a 9-page paper that outlines strategic plans for the takeover of U.S. government buildings on January 6, 2021. The following podcast explained how Utah's elite maintained power while hiding their sit out of the legal system, Shadows of Power, how Utah's elite maintained power while hiding in plain sight. Up next, on Wednesday 11th of October, was the resignation of Biden, followed by his indictments. Q was hinting at the foreshadowing of a date or time by posting the Mickey Mouse clock. Mickey's hands pointing to 10 and 2, which mirrored equals February 10th. That could be the date of special elections, which could be the single most important event that you'll have in your entire life, as well as life-changing for people worldwide. 5G and air pollution were done by the deep state to destroy the planet. The 2020 election was stolen by the Chinese Communist Party under cooperation of the Democratic Party. Ben Fulford, assuming a 1-to-1 value ratio, the chances of gold and silver exceeding $1,000/oz is 100%. The whistleblower Snowden continues to help the White Hats and is very much involved in the plan to save the world. The EBS will occur before the end of 2023. Trump's return hinges on one very strategic event. Once it occurs, he will be back. Roughly one-half of the over 500,000 sealed indictments are against stock market banks, traders or higher-ups in the stock exchange. Friday 6th of October, get ready for the greatest shock and awe false flag operation in human history. Friday 6th of October, global military operation, new SG Anon, global military operation update today October 6th, Friday 6th of October, intel alert, Derek Johnson, Red Pill Journey, DUMS, Evergreen, Pentagon, CIA, Biden, GCR, QFS, banks, NATO, Soros, Obama deep state operations. A global currency reset, on Tuesday, October. For 12 hours U.S. Treasury representatives went to redemption centers and entered codes for each nation's currency. Pings came back that the code was valid, meaning the redemption center could receive currency from each nation in exchange for the U.S. note. In the last 24 hours, Tier 4A started preparing and paying Tier 4 groups. On Wednesday 4th of October, Iraq was welcomed to the World Trade Organization with a fully reinstated Iraqi dinar international traded currency. Thursday 5th of October, Wolverine, Shelton said on his call that the 10 days of darkness and 12 days of disclosures would start after an event, EBS test, on Wednesday 4th of October. On Thursday 6th of October, I got a call. Everything has really begun. Isaac has spoken to someone and he says it looks like it's going to happen. All the leaders of the Tier 1 platform have been funded and by next week all members will be paid and it will be fast. Thursday 5th of October, Tony said he has a 2-hour window tonight, then laughed, and said he should have said the next 24 hours. Not every country is going at the same time. It's their own choice. The rate won't be on the Forex until the end of the weekend. Sounds like they'll get their 72 hours of joy. Monday is a holiday, so that would be a good time for us to go. Iraqi government salaries were being paid a month in advance effective Wednesday 4th of October. Thursday 5th of October, Bruce, bondholders Tier 3 will get notification of liquidity over the weekend. Tier 4B, us, the Internet Group, will be notified either Saturday 7th of October or Monday afternoon 8th of October and will begin appointments either Moan. 8th of October or Tues. 9th of October. On Friday 6th of October the U.S. note will be fully in the system and available at the bank free. 6th of October or Monday 8th of October, Friday 6th of October. Marks, a lot of my sources feel that Monday 9th of October is our day, a lot of them, actually they think our day is before that and Monday is when we start going to the bank. They are all expecting big things this weekend. More chatter on the Iraqi side of things with great expectations for the weekend. Most are looking late Saturday/early Sunday for something from Iraq. Some type of announcement. Yesterday a number of redemption staff told me they are on standby specifically for currency exchanges. Iraq may go on Saturday. Probably what we would see are call centers working over the weekend to make our appointments, and appointments starting on Monday, that the most likely scenario. Friday 6th of October TNT call, the whole world will see the RV by Sunday, 8th of October, however we could see it sooner. Central Bank of Iraq and Reuters announced, next Sunday, 8th of October, will be a special day in all Iraqi banks, which could witness unprecedented overcrowding and crowding at cash withdrawal windows. Iraqis were told in mosques, a new Iraq will begin by Sunday, 8th of October. Rumored timeline starting in October and continuing for 3 months. Social Security benefits will be significantly higher, topping out at $5,200. In January regular benefits will continue, though still be a lot higher. Wolverine, Shelton said on his call that the 10 days of darkness and 12 days of disclosures would start after an event, the EBS's presidential message, on Wednesday 4th of October. By Tues. 10th of October the bulk of redemption appointments and exchanges were expected to be done. Wednesday 11th of October. Was another possible EBS date, along with the removal of Biden, and that would kick off a 4-month military action. The IMF and World Bank will hold their last annual meeting on Sunday 15th of October. Starting in the 4th week of October restitution and recreational allowance will be paid out. The amount of monies paid back will be based on federal taxes paid since 1940s, interest on mortgages, bank loans, car loans and credit card interest, along with interest earned on those monies over the years. Those 60 and older will be paid in 3 equal monthly payments for October, November and December. Those 50 to 60 will get payments over the next 12 months and those younger will be paid out over 15 years, though they have to be employed in order to qualify. The end of October. Sidney Powell has a date with the Supreme Court to present evidence on 2020 election fraud. Wednesday 1st of November. Was the goal to have currency exchanges and ZIM bond redemptions completed. The Rodriguez Trust will administer universal basic income for citizens of all GCR-compliant countries. The amount per individual or family will depend on the status, needs, employment level, and age of the person/family and will work to encourage people to work if they can. He said we need to help our friends and family understand that this will happen in the next 3 to 6 months. Starting January 1, 2024 the fiat US dollar will be worthless, all currencies across the globe will be on par 1-to-1 with each other, Social Security benefits will be much higher in the SSR&R, payments start on a monthly basis. See Global Financial Crisis. 5 months before his assassination, President John F. Kennedy issued this executive order that would give the American currency back to the people by printing money based on a silver standard, taking away the power of the Federal Reserve banking cartel. Many argue this is the reason that JFK was assassinated. Complete list of Bank of America branches that are closing in October 2023. Restored republics, the Wednesday 4th of October. EBS wasn't the EBS. Thursday 5th of October White Hats destroy FEMA's EBS. United States Army Rangers on Wednesday upset FEMA's scheduled emergency broadcast and destroyed the central transmitter. But only after the wicked agency activated an alert that could have exposed patriots to federal harassment, a source in General Eric M. Smith's office told Real Raw News. Hang him. Admiral Stevens says of corrupt Army Major David Dunbar, but without tribunal. A new 5,000 plus army of Starlink satellites was already in place to take over mainstream media satellites. The ease will broadcast over the Starlink system, the global alliance's takedown of the cabal, showing arrests and tribunals of global elites charged with crimes against humanity. The documentaries have been made in 55 languages and 600 dialects and will be shown on all channels on the planet. Pentagon confirmed Ukraine's role in biodefense with 46 biolabs there. Conspiracy theory is now just another confirmed Pentagon press release. The Senegalese president announced the dissolution of the country's government and reported that a new government led by the prime minister will be announced soon. Niger. The U.S. State Department is preparing to officially designate the military takeover in Niger as a coup d'état as soon as next week, 3 U.S. officials told CNN. Ukraine list of top names who have allegedly been stealing our tax dollars in the largest money laundering operation of all time, per top Ukrainian official. The below is an alleged copy of a list that has been provided. It is a fraction of the over $100 million we have sent to Ukraine, but it is still theft of our tax dollars and a substantial amount of money. Receipts coming. White check mark, Joe Biden $92 million, white check mark, Mitch McConnell $89 million, white check mark, Nancy Pelosi $86 million, white check mark, Chuck Schumer $66 million, white check mark, Lindsey Graham $82 million, white check mark, Mitt Romney $71 million, white check mark, John Cornyn $41 million, white check mark, Adam Schiff $62 million, white check mark, Dan Crenshaw $20 million, white check mark, Elizabeth Cheney $77 million, white check mark, Kevin McCarthy $42 million, white check mark, Jamie Raskin $38 million, white check mark, Mike Pence $61 million, white check mark, Greg Pence $17 million, white check mark, Rick Scott $63 million, white check mark, Hakeem Jeffries $74 million, white check mark, Ilhan Omar $33 million, white check mark, Elizabeth Warren $42 million. There's evidence the FBI planned the January 6 operation and planted documents days earlier that were later used against innocent Americans. It was discovered that the government itself was the author of the mysterious 1776 returns document. The 1776 returns document is the title of a 9-page paper that outlines strategic plans for the takeover of U.S. government buildings on January 6, 2021. It was confirmed in court that the FBI was behind the document and an FBI operative was the author of the document. Reports released by a Ukrainian official show more than $1 billion of aid money that has been sent to the Ukraine has actually been laundered back into the pockets of U.S. government officials on both sides of the island across different U.S. federal government branches of power. Friday 6 October Medbeds in Jazara, the White Hats and the Green Button, Healthcare Revolution and President Trump, trust the plan. FBI monitoring Magna supporters. Cloud seeding science is just another term for geoengineering and weather modification. First they seed the clouds with heavy metal particles, and then they use HAARP to induct the rain via the electromagnetic frequencies. They have basically confirmed everything that we have already knew years ago, that weather modification is real, however it's just conspiracy theory when we call them out on it. 46 of 50 states have recounted the 2020 election vote and confirmed that Biden lost, Trump won by 80%. Mainstream media has yet to report why. And why have the other 4 states refused to recount, or report their recount? The Biden administration says there is an immediate need to waive regulations and build a border wall as the migrant crisis spirals out of control. Remarkable. 4 years ago this was racist. Now they're advocating for it. There is presently an acute and immediate need to construct physical barriers and roads in the vicinity of the border of the United States in order to prevent unlawful entries into the United States in the project areas pursuant to Sections 102A and 102B of the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act of 1996, Mayorkas said in an announcement. Gee, maybe they shouldn't have sold all the border wall parts. Biden's fake inauguration. Go back and watch the fake 2020 inauguration. It was 100% filmed on 2 different days. Shoes changed. People appeared and disappeared. U.S. Marshals were seen directing traffic on people with names as big as Nancy Pelosi. Thursday, January 21, 2021, Communist troops surround a U.S. under martial law, inauguration not live on TV.
Trump's latest undemocratic move, calling to end debates. The former president is the clear frontrunner, but 3/4 of GOP voters say they're at least considering voting for someone else. Donald Trump's opponents at Wednesday night's Republican presidential primary debate reserved their harshest attacks for his decision not to participate. Trump's response, a call for future debates to simply be cancelled. Even before the debate officially wrapped up, Trump's campaign issued a statement saying that the proceedings were as boring and inconsequential as the first debate and declaring that nothing that was said will change the dynamics of the primary contest being dominated by President Trump. The campaign then cited Trump's most favorable polls, and it urged the Republican National Committee to immediately put an end to any further primary debates to focus on beating President Biden. Translation: We want a coronation for Trump. In September of the year before the election. Trump doesn't technically call for ending the contest altogether by, say, canceling the actual primaries along with the debates months before any votes are cast. But that's the logical extension of his sentiments, which certainly align with his various other undemocratic moves and impulses. This is a man, after all, who tried to overturn the 2020 election on bogus grounds and who has signaled that he is gearing up to consolidate power should he retake it. Trump has repeatedly and suggestively praised autocrats in ways that his supporters laugh off, but that cause advocates for democracy to worry. He made a habit during his presidency of bulldozing long-standing Democratic norms. But are Republican primary voters there yet? It doesn't appear that the vast majority of them are. The data suggest that a coronation is premature. There is no question that Trump is the runaway frontrunner. His 40-point lead in the 538 average is bigger than any lead that's ever been overcome. Yet we're talking about a relatively small sample size, given that the parties moved toward letting the voters decide their nominees in primaries in the 1970s. And we have seen deficits of nearly 30 points overcome, including this late in the contest, to determine the 2008 Democratic presidential nominee. Trump's being overtaken may be unlikely, but it is hardly outside the realm of possibility. Barack Obama turned a 28-point deficit in October 2007 into a double-digit lead by April 2008, a nearly 40-point shift on the margins. The question of whether Republicans are willing to at least entertain the possibility of ditching Trump is also in play. It appears that some are. CBS News/YouGov polling this week showed Trump dominating the early contests in Iowa and New Hampshire by 30 and 37 points, respectively. About half of potential voters in the Republican contest in each state support Trump. But in each case, fewer than half of those Trump supporters, and fewer than one-fourth of potential Republican primary voters overall, said they were locked in. Of potential voters in the Republican contest, just 20% in Iowa and 23% in New Hampshire said they were considering only Trump. In both cases, that was actually less than the number who said they were not considering Trump. Trump may believe there is no need for further debates, but a plurality of Republicans continue to say not only that there should be debates, but also that Trump should participate in them. Another YouGov poll this week showed decreasing interest in Trump's debating, but GOP voters still said he should participate, 39% to 31%. Candidates have been known to call for races to conclude early in the service of focusing on the general election when it looks as though they have a nomination wrapped up. It is not common, however, to take this posture before any voters actually vote. And it should not be lost on anybody that Trump is issuing this demand before we get anything amounting to a resolution to his various legal issues. While we could dismiss Trump's call as mere provocation, it puts his party in a decidedly inconvenient position. The guy it badly feels the need to cater to, for fear of his burning the house down, is now pressuring it to deprive his opponents of their most significant forum. It seems unlikely the GOP will do what he asks yet, but consider it Trump's opening bid in his latest attempt to cast aside the will of the voters in the service of empowering himself. Anti-Trump GOP groups start waving white flag. This memo shows why. It's been evident for a long time that virtually nothing is working for Republican-aligned groups and GOP candidates who have tried to take Donald Trump down a peg or two. A new memo from one such group crystallizes the problem, and it's the latest indication that the outside groups might be inching toward the white flag of surrender. The memo from a Club for Growth-aligned group called Win It Back, first reported by the New York Times' Jonathan Swan and obtained by the Washington Post, contains strikingly candid findings after the group spent $6 million on ads in Iowa and South Carolina. All attempts to undermine Trump's conservative credentials on specific issues were ineffective, regardless of the setting: live surveys, online surveys, focus groups, controlled experiments. Every traditional post-production ad attacking President Trump either backfired or produced no impact on his ballot support and favorability. This includes ads that primarily feature video of him saying liberal or stupid comments from his own mouth. The memo suggests that testimonial ads from former Trump supporters can work or at least not lead to a backlash. But that's only when they are handled very gently. They must exclude talking about issues, even ones on which Trump would seem to be out of step with the most passionate portion of the base. Those include his promotion of vaccines, praise of Dr. Anthony S. Fauci, insane government spending, failure to build the wall, recent attacks on pro-life legislation, refusal to fight woke issues, and openness to gun control. One pandemic-themed ad in Iowa tested well with focus groups but produced a backlash in our online randomized controlled experiment, improving President Trump's ballot support by 4 points and net favorability by 11 points. Rather than focus on issues, the memo concludes, the ads can focus on broader themes that do not produce a meaningful backlash. Those include concerns about Trump being able to beat President Biden, the noise created by his various controversies, and his attacks on fellow conservatives. The memo also describes a particularly intractable problem, which is voters essentially dismissing Trump's liabilities out of hand. Even when voters are shown something otherwise objectionable to primary voters, they find a way to rationalize and dismiss it. If you don't make clear that the messenger is someone who once supported Trump, the viewer will automatically put their guard up, assuming the messenger is just another Trump hater whose opinion should be summarily dismissed. None of this is shocking stuff. It comports with virtually everything we're seeing in the Republican nominating contest. It's a picture of a personality-driven party, not a policy-driven one. The details are negligible and negotiable, and people will just adjust their priors to suit a candidate in whom they've invested so much. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, Republican, had to do cleanup work last month when he urged Republicans not to be listless vessels who simply go along with whatever happens to come down the pike on Truth Social every morning. But this memo is merely the latest suggestion that that's effectively the state of affairs among many in the party. They are happy to be such vessels. While DeSantis's words might have been impolitic, his point stands. The fact that we're seeing this rather dour memo now shouldn't escape notice. It comes as certain Trump-skeptical groups have begun to bow to the apparent reality of Trump being nominated again. He leads in polls by around 40 points. Win It Back has spent only $5,000 on ads this month after spending $2.5 million in Iowa last month, according to NBC News. The report also notes that there is virtually nothing in the way of an anti-Trump conservative campaign in South Carolina. Anti-Trump Republicans are griping about the lack of air cover, despite big promises from the likes of the Koch network. Another anti-Trump group, the Republican Accountability PAC, now flatly says it is giving up on the primary after spending $1 million on ads in Iowa. We have stopped spending money in the primary, the PAC's head, Sarah Longwell, told Reuters this week. We decided we needed to hold our powder for the general election. And one of the earliest groups formed by conservatives to oppose Trump, the Lincoln Project, began promoting a video after Wednesday's debate declaring the primary is over. It's a foregone conclusion, the group declared. Trump will be the party's nominee. Trump himself seems to have effectively declared the primary over. At the end of the debate, he called for canceling future debates in the name of focusing on the general election. On that count, at least, it seems Trump and his most well-heeled GOP critics are starting to agree. Cornel West to run for president as independent, leaving Green Party. Cornel West, a liberal activist who launched a presidential bid in June, announced Thursday that he will leave the Green Party and run as an independent instead. In a campaign statement, the long-shot candidate and left-wing academic said he was making the switch to ensure true democracy. Democracy means more choices, not backroom deals. It means freedom to vote your conscience without being shamed or bullied, his campaign stated. As Drive West's campaign for president grows, he believes the best way to challenge the entrenched system is by focusing 100% on the people, not on the intricacies of internal party dynamics. This is the second time West has changed his mind about how he will approach his campaign. When he launched his effort, West said he would run for the People's Party nomination, then abandoned that strategy to focus on the Green Party, which already had greater ballot access. As an independent candidate, West will have to do the work to get on the ballot in the District of Columbia and the 17 states where the Green Party now claims to have ballot access for 2024. But it also means he will not have to participate in the internal Green Party nominating process, which West had become concerned would distract from his efforts to take his message to voters. The two parties who have a monopoly on American politics, because state legislatures make the rules, have created an onerous and what they want to be impossible process, West campaign manager Peter Dow said in an interview Thursday. From our perspective, one of the fundamental focus points of this campaign is to actually embrace true democracy. True democracy is choices. West held a fundraiser this week in Washington, where he made no mention of his impending decision to leave the Green Party. Some in attendance at the fundraiser wore Green Party items, so it is unclear whether his supporters were aware he was considering a switch to running as an independent. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is mounting a long-shot challenge to President Biden in the 2024 Democratic primary, has suggested that he is considering a pivot to a third-party campaign. Self-help guru Marianne Williamson also is running as a Democrat. Despite some trepidation over Biden's strength as a candidate, Democrats have largely coalesced around his re-election campaign, and many have criticized candidates including Kennedy, Williamson, and West for possibly siphoning votes away from Biden and ultimately allowing the Republican nominee to win. There is no third-party candidate that will win this election. That has never happened in the history of this, and it ain't going to start in 2024, Jamie Harrison, the chair of the Democratic National Committee, said in July. And so, we've got to stay focused on the fight that we have ahead, and at the threat that we see to American democracy, and that's the extremists coming out of the Republican Party. On the Republican side, former President Donald Trump is leading a large field of candidates seeking the GOP presidential nomination. Colby Itkowitz contributed to this report. Court picks Alabama congressional map likely to mean Democratic gain. A panel of 3 federal judges on Thursday chose a new Alabama congressional map that maintains a black majority district in the state and establishes another near-black majority district that could flip a House seat for Democrats in 2024. Thursday's decision is the latest in a long legal battle that pitted Alabama's GOP-led legislature against Democrats and civil rights groups that argued that Republicans were illegally diluting the power of black voters in the state. About 27% of the state's voting population is black. In the map chosen Thursday, the state's 2nd congressional district has a black voting age population of 48.7%, and its 7th district maintains its black majority with a black voting age population of 51.9%. Top Republican elected officials in the state indicated that they will use the map during the 2024 election cycle, but that future legal challenges are expected. Alabama Secretary of State Wes Allen, Republican, said in a statement that his office will facilitate the 2024 election cycle in accordance with the map the federal court has forced upon Alabama and ordered us to use. But he also said that the legal portion of this process has not yet been completed. A full hearing on the redistricting issue will take place in the future, and I trust Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall to represent Alabama through that process, he said. In a statement, Marshall said that the state will abide by the court's order for the 2024 elections and expects to continue to defend the state's law in court for future elections. The case has been closely watched because of an array of challenges to congressional maps advancing in courts throughout the country that could give one political party or the other an advantage heading into the 2024 elections. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled in June that Alabama's congressional map did not comply with the Voting Rights Act, because it unlawfully diluted the political power of black residents. The decision upheld the federal panel's earlier ruling. Alabama's legislature was subsequently tasked with redrawing its congressional map boundaries. After the legislature redrew the map in July and it was signed into law by Governor Kay Ivey, Republican, the same federal panel of judges found again that it did not comply with the Voting Rights Act. Instead of tasking the conservative state legislature with redrawing the maps again, the federal panel directed a special master and cartographer to create 3 proposed remedial maps to be filed by September 25. We do not take lightly federal intrusion into a process ordinarily reserved for the state legislature. But we have now said twice that this Voting Rights Act case is not close, the judges wrote in the order then. And we are deeply troubled that the state enacted a map that the state readily admits does not provide the remedy we said federal law requires. Late last month, the state of Alabama again tried to escalate the matter to the conservative-leaning U.S. Supreme Court. The Supreme Court for a second time refused Alabama's attempt to hold the 2024 elections under a new congressional map judged to be an unlawful attempt to diminish the power of the state's black voters. The map put forward Thursday retains 86.9% of Alabamians in their district under the plan signed into law by Ivey this summer, the panel's order states. Democratic Party groups and voting rights advocacy groups involved in the case celebrated Thursday's decision. Jatan Bosby-Gilchrist, executive director of the American Civil Liberties Union of Alabama, which was involved in the legal battle over the congressional map, said in a statement that the court's order means, for the first time, black voters in 2 congressional districts will have an opportunity to elect a candidate of their choice. Former U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder, who served in the Obama administration, said that other states in the midst of similar litigation should take note. Other states with pending cases should view this map, and this process, as both an example of basic fairness and a warning that denying equal representation to black voters, violating the Voting Rights Act, and defying federal court orders is a direct tie to an odious past and will no longer be tolerated, Holder said in a statement issued by the National Redistricting Foundation, which backed litigation in the matter. Representative Susan DelBene, Democrat, Washington, chair of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, called the court's map selection a victory for democracy and the state's black communities. Today's decision affirms that Alabama will no longer have a map that dilutes the voting strength of black citizens, but rather one that reflects the diversity of the state and ensures every community's voice is heard in Congress, she added. Robert Barnes contributed to this report. Democrats remove Iowa caucuses from first-in-the-nation status. The decision ends a nearly 2-year fight over the state's place in selecting a presidential nominee. St. Louis, the Democratic Party officially dislodged Iowa from its prized status as the first state in the presidential nominating process Friday, approving the state Democratic Party's plan to release their results on Super Tuesday next year. The decision ends a nearly 2-year fight over Iowa's place in selecting a Democratic nominee, which resulted in a complete overhaul of the calendar. President Biden and his aides elevated South Carolina to the first spot, followed by New Hampshire and Nevada a week later, and then Michigan. The original plan called for Georgia holding a primary just before Michigan, but Democrats in that state were unable to move up their date because of Republican opposition. The approval Friday moves Iowa out of the early window of the presidential nominating process, but the Democratic National Committee's Rules and Bylaws panel did not resolve outstanding issues with New Hampshire, which has a state law mandating that it hold the first presidential primary. New Hampshire has refused to relinquish its spot to South Carolina, setting up a conflict with the National Party, and members of the DNC Bylaws Committee warned states Friday about potential sanctions should they not abide by the order adopted by the National Party. As part of Iowa's new plan, Democratic voters can sign up to receive a presidential preference card, to be mailed starting January 12, or participate in an in-person precinct caucus on January 15, the same date as Republicans. The party will not release the results of their mail-in caucus until Super Tuesday on March 5, and any cards postmarked on or before that day will be accepted. That plan received conditional compliance from the DNC Bylaws Committee Friday at the National Party's fall meeting in St. Louis. Iowa Democrats, however, are holding out hope that they can return to the early window for the 2028 presidential nominating process. I am pleased to have repeated reassurance from the co-chairs and this committee that the presidential nominating calendar discussions will once again be opened up for 2028, where I expect Iowa to compete strongly for a significant voice in the selection of the Democratic nominee as we have for years, Rita Hart, the chair of the Iowa Democratic Party, wrote in a letter to the committee. Mignon Moore, the co-chair of the Rules and Bylaws Committee, confirmed the DNC intends to review the presidential calendar again for 2028. In New Hampshire, officials have long given Iowa significant leeway to go first because its caucus process differs in important ways from a primary election, though there were some concerns that Iowa's revised plan could have triggered New Hampshire to jump earlier and create chaos in the coming months of the Republican primary campaign. While I am not yet ready to set the date of the New Hampshire presidential primary, the news out of Iowa as to how the Democrats plan to conduct their presidential nominating event is positive in terms of preserving the traditional positions of the Iowa caucuses and the New Hampshire presidential primary, New Hampshire Secretary of State David Scanlon, Republican, said in a statement. New Hampshire has been planning for a primary, at a date not yet determined, in January. The status of Iowa was imperiled in 2020 after a botched caucus process, which delayed reporting of results and infuriated party leaders who were already dismayed by the state's dearth of racial diversity, the rightward drift of its voters and the leftward drift of its Democratic caucus goers. Biden lost the state to Donald Trump by 8 percentage points in 2020, after coming in a distant fourth in the Democratic caucuses. Iowa Republicans have been concerned that Democrats could force changes to the caucus date, leading to a breakdown in the relationship in between the two state parties, which have a history of coordinating to promote Iowa's first-in-the-nation caucuses. Constant and repeated attempts to thwart Iowa's cherished first-in-the-nation caucus is nothing new, Jeff Kaufman, chair of the Iowa Republican Party, said in a statement. While there have been different tactics deployed this year, including the complicity and incompetence of the Iowa Democratic Party, the Republican Party of Iowa and the Republican National Committee will continue to steadfastly defend our half-century-old carve-out system, to ensure the triumph of grassroots democracy that ultimately strengthens our presidential nominating process. Scherer reported from Washington. White House condemns cruel and unacceptable posts about Interior spokesman. Activist Chaya Reichik and the At Libs of TikTok account she created criticized Interior spokesman Tyler Cherry, an LGBTQ rights advocate. The White House on Sunday condemned a conservative social media activist for ridiculing an openly gay Interior Department official on the site X, describing her posts as cruel and unacceptable. Chaya Reichik, who created the At Libs of TikTok account on X, formerly known as Twitter, sparked a debate online this week after posting and reposting several times about Tyler Cherry, Interior's principal deputy communications director. The posts appeared to criticize his appearance, referred to him as one of the total weirdos the Biden administration has hired, laughed at photos of him in a dress that the New York Times published in a piece on his wedding, and reposted another message that called him a radical leftist. In addition to his work at Interior, Cherry is part of a queer DJ collective pushing for a more inclusive LGBTQ nightlife scene in Washington. He had joined the Biden administration during its first weeks in 2021, and previously worked in Democratic politics in Arizona and at the liberal watchdog group Media Matters for America, according to his X and LinkedIn profiles. The White House called Cherry an invaluable member of our team, according to a statement first obtained by The Advocate, an LGBTQ+ magazine. Interior declined to comment. No one should be targeted simply for being themselves, the statement said. This is an administration that believes to our core in the principle that out of many we are one, and we are proud that the people who serve in it reflect those values as well. Reichik and the At Libs of TikTok account have nearly 3 million followers combined, and have been frequently cited by Tucker Carlson and other right-wing media figures. After gaining a large Twitter following in 2022 after calling on openly gay teachers to stop teaching, Reichik began criticizing transgender medical treatment of young people at hospitals. Reichik and the At Libs of TikTok account did not respond to direct messages on X seeking comment, including questions about whether the posts targeted Cherry for his appearance. On Thursday afternoon, Reichik and the At Libs of TikTok account posted several pictures of Cherry, referring to him as the queer spokesperson for Interior and, in one reply, asking, "How many sets of pronouns do you think he has?" The At Libs of TikTok post also included screenshots of years-old political posts that appeared to be from Cherry's personal account from before he joined the Biden administration. The old posts criticized former President Donald Trump, along with other members of his administration, and commented on racism and other social issues. It spurred other replies that called Cherry a disgrace or a diversity hire. Several commenters on X came to Cherry's defense, questioning why he would attract attention in the first place. Reichik's posts came less than a week after Interior Secretary Deb Haaland posted a video of herself with self-described queer environmentalist and drag queen Patty Gonia, discussing the cultural importance of Stonewall National Monument, which commemorates the LGBTQ civil rights movement. Some critics, including tennis star Martina Navratilova, who is a lesbian, questioned why the Interior Secretary would appear with the performer. Navratilova suggested that dressing in drag amounts to a pathetic parody of women, though some drag performers have been active in LGBTQ rights. Blinken rejects claim that $6 billion in Iranian assets helps Hamas. No money has been spent on anything, but when it is tapped, it will be available only for things like food and medicine. Secretary of State Antony Blinken pushed back Sunday against unsubstantiated claims that Iranian assets that were recently freed up facilitated Hamas's surprise attack on Israel, noting that none of the money has been spent yet and that it can be used only for humanitarian purposes. Not a single dollar from that account has actually been spent to date, Blinken said on ABC's This Week. And in any event, it's very carefully and closely regulated by the Treasury Department to make sure that it's only used for food, for medicine, for medical equipment. A Hamas spokesman told the BBC that the group received direct support from Iran to conduct its attack. Blinken denounced Iran's long history of backing Hamas, but emphasized that Iran had not yet used the funds that were recently made available. The Biden administration in September notified Congress that banks would be allowed to transfer $6 billion in frozen Iranian oil assets as part of an agreement to exchange 5 American citizens detained in Iran for 5 Iranian citizens detained in the United States. Under the deal, the funds were transferred from South Korea to Qatar and could only be used for humanitarian purposes. South Korea held $6 billion in Iranian funds under a 2018 waiver from the Trump administration that allowed it to continue to purchase oil from Iran. The assets were frozen in 2019 when the Trump administration increased sanctions on Iran. Under the recent deal, Blinken signed a waiver that said foreign banks would not be subject to U.S. sanctions for transferring the Iranian funds. The funds were transferred to Qatar's central bank and can be used only for humanitarian purchases made by vendors who have been vetted. The United States monitors how the funds are used to ensure they go toward providing food, medicine, and other humanitarian needs to ordinary Iranians, according to the State Department. Nader Habibi, a professor of economics at Brandeis University's Crown Center for Middle East Studies, said in an interview Sunday with The Washington Post that Iran was likely to use any additional resources for regime survival. Releasing that $6 billion obviously opens up resources for Iran, even if it is allocated just for food and medicine. That means that Iran would be able to release some funds that were previously going to food and medicine for other purposes, Habibi said. However, direct contribution to additional resources for Hamas, in my opinion, would be limited. In 2020, the State Department reported that Iran spends about $100 million a year on Hamas and other Palestinian groups. Cliff Kupchan, chairman of the consulting firm Eurasia Group, called that a relatively small amount in the context of the country's overall finances and said Iran would most likely bankroll Hamas at the same level regardless of whether the $6 billion in humanitarian funds were made available. The reality is that funding Hamas is a foreign policy national security priority for Iran, he said. They're going to find that money. The money they want to spend, they're going to spend. Iran is going to be more interested in putting money toward domestic concerns, he said. They need what they've got to tend the farm at home, Kupchan told the Post. Some Republicans criticized the unfreezing of the Iranian assets at the time, arguing it could inspire the country to capture more prisoners in the future. They stepped up their condemnations of the agreement after Hamas launched its attack Saturday on Israel. The Biden administration must be held accountable for its appeasement of these Hamas terrorists, including handing over billions of dollars to them and their Iranian backers, House Majority Leader Steve Scalise, Republican, Louisiana, who was running for House Speaker, wrote in a message on X, the platform previously known as Twitter. On NBC's Meet the Press, Blinken emphasized that the funds must be used for humanitarian assistance. When any money is spent from that account, it can only be used for medical supplies, for food, for medicine, he said. And those who are saying otherwise are either misinformed or misinforming. And it's wrong either way. Nikki Haley, who served as U.S. ambassador to the United Nations in the Trump administration and is now seeking the Republican nomination for president, was more nuanced than some of her fellow Republicans. Suggesting on Meet the Press that the unfrozen assets would free up other money to allow Iran to fund Hamas's attack, Haley said, it was irresponsible for Secretary Blinken to say that the $6 billion doesn't weigh in here. She added, I mean, let's be honest with the American people and understand that Hamas knows and Iran knows they're moving money around as we speak because they know $6 billion is going to be released. Blinken on This Week condemned Iran for its past support for Hamas but said that officials have not yet determined whether Iran was involved in the latest offensive. Hamas wouldn't be Hamas without the support that it's gotten over many years from Iran, he said. We haven't yet seen direct evidence that Iran was behind this particular attack or involved. Echoing Blinken, Deputy National Security Advisor John Feiner on Fox News Sunday said the Biden administration was looking into whether Iran had a role. It is too soon to draw any definitive conclusions, but Iran has been a long-time supporter of Hamas and has complete complicity in the capabilities that Hamas has built up over time, he said. Feiner said the United States would closely monitor how Iran spends the recently unfrozen assets. If Iran spends that money in ways that it's not supposed to, we will know, he said. We expect that this money is only going to be spent over a fairly extended period of time, years, not weeks, not months, and that spending money on stuff, food items, agricultural products, medicines, that benefits the Iranian people, but it does not benefit the Iranian military, is frankly not related to the discussion that we're having today. In a separate appearance on Fox News Sunday, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo joined those who connected the weekend attack to the freed-up funds. I was on this very show a few weeks back talking about the fact that when the United States pays $1 billion per hostage, there'll be more hostage-taking, he said. Look what happened yesterday, more hostages taken by the Iranian regime's proxy, Hamas in Gaza. Hamas militants are holding Israeli military personnel and civilians hostage, according to Hamas and Israel. Blinken on Face the Nation said the U.S. government is investigating whether any Americans have been taken hostage. Mariana Alfaro and Daniel Gilbert contributed to this report.